Kyle Filipowski's future position is at power forward. The question, can he do it? Next on Locked on Jazz.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps, and we've got the free daily newsletter for you, and we're free and available on YouTube. Free and available for you every single day. It's the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. On today's show, we'll touch on Brice Sensabaugh's hot streak, Oscar Tshiebwe's existence, how bad a win was that last night, ball pressure defensively, overall performance last night, who we played. We're starting with a little move the Jazz made yesterday, was starting Kyle Filipowski at the power forward. And then the more we talked to everyone yesterday, it was clear that the Jazz vision right now is that if Kyle Filipowski is going to be a successful NBA player, it's going to largely be at the power forward. Let's review a few things here. Kyle came to the Jazz, and the question mark about him was really his shooting. The offensive game that he had at Duke, we had a little bit of a question of whether it would translate or not. But in his 2 years at Duke, he shot 28 and 35% for three for a combined 31% from three. And last year was a 67% free throw shooter, overall 72. Those two numbers do not portend towards someone being a particularly good NBA shooter. And so Kyle dropped in the draft, I think largely for two reasons. One was a massive concern about him defensively. And two was that if he really doesn't shoot it that well, then you have kind of a mid-post offensive player without the range that's needed, who's not very good defensively, and he slides to 32 in the draft. He is not particularly long defensively, and he is not a particularly big impact at the rim defensively. What's turned out to be the case so far in 60 games of action, pretty good stretch here for Kyle, about 20 minutes a night. He's going to turn out to be a 1,200-minute rookie. It's great. He's probably further on the spectrum in two areas than anyone thought. He's better offensively. His ball skills are terrific. His passing is elite. His ability to score around the basket is what he came with, and it's showing to be true. And then he's added a tremendous ability to shoot. He is shooting 39% from three now. But to tell that whole story, you have to remember that there's a stretch of the season where he shoots about 17% from three. But in January, he went 9 of 35 from three. And since then, he's 40 of his last 85. That's awesome. This guy's offensive game is so much further along with this shooting than anyone anticipated, than anyone expected. If he had done this, if they knew he could have a 2-month stretch of going 40 of 85 from three, particularly after going 9 of 35, he's not the 32nd pick of the draft. Since February 1st, in the last 24 games, he is shooting well over 50% from the field. He is 40 of 85 from three, which is about 46%. And his free throw shooting's poor. He's really skilled. And his passing is elite, and he can do a lot of things. The problem is, if there is any indicator 1,200 minutes into his career, he can't play center. At least not with any defense. At least not any more than just as a small ball center that's out there for some of the time with no idea of playing defense. If you look at Kyle on the floor with Keyonte, George, Colin Sexton, Lowry Markkanen, John Collins, good players. The defense, effective field goal percentage has allowed, this is the lineup he's played the most, was 66%. First, number one worst effective field goal percentage of any lineup in the NBA. Sixth percentile defensively. He doesn't have a lot of big lineup minutes, but the defensive rating of the 4 lineups that he's played the most possessions with this year. Okay. So he's played a lot of groups, but not very many. 129, 129, 129, 131. Okay. What does that mean? Just to make sure you have that. The league average offensively is about 115 right now. It's 114.6. The worst defense in the NBA, who is New Orleans, is a 120. And we just gave you, when Kyle's on the floor in the 4 lineups, when he's playing center, 129, 129, 129, 131. And so right now, the Jazz have made a little switch, if they can, and trying to play him at power forward, which means he's playing with Walker, which is tough. And so far, it hasn't been great. He's played about 941 minutes there with possessions there, and it's turned out to be a little better defensively. And specifically, a lot of that is with Micah Potter, Drew Eubanks, and some of those minutes that were actually okay. Specifically to playing with Walker, they did it a little bit. It was a disaster to open the game last night, and then it wasn't great after that. And so far, it is overall, it's a -9. But actually, it has struggled offensively, and it has been good defensively. It is in the 75th percentile defensively, which is beginning to maybe show a sign that, yes, Kyle can figure out how to play defensively. Now, we just don't know yet, but there's a bunch of aspects to this that are really vital. 1, can he move his feet well enough? 2, can he switch on a smaller, quicker guards? Defensively, this is. And 3, will he still be able to be active rebounding and be a force with his size that while he's not long, particularly with his arms, he still has the size. But the biggest issue is if you're playing the 4, you're going to have to navigate some screens. You're going to get switched on to smaller guards. And can you do it? He's had a few plays this year that are horrifically bad where he's guarding Naz Reid at about 15 feet, Reed gets it, spins on him, and Kyle is still standing still when Naz Reid dunks. But that's a different thing. This is going to be guarding in space, and there have been some signs of success. If you look at the data right now as an isolation defender, he's bottom 10 in the NBA. He probably should be. He's a rookie. Who cares? But that is where he is right now. If you look at him overall so far this year, teams take 3% more shots at the rim when he's in the game. That's a little bit because Walker's a deterrent, but teams do see Kyle and just decide to go to the rim. And then the real area is where around the basket, he doesn't see, the little floaters and things like that. He has no resistance. So this is hopefully a better way to use him. But one of the great discoveries of the season is the transformation of shooting that he's done while working with Andrew Warren and Mike Williams, assistant coach. Will Hardy oversaw it. They took movement out of his shot. His movement was he used to catch it, bring it down, bring it up, bring it over, and shoot it. And now they have him just straight through, all the way through. They've just limited the movement. His lower body used to have a sway in it. They've gotten that out. And his shooting 40 of his last 85 from 3 since February 1st is awesome. And my memory, by the way, is that February 1st was bad. That if I wanted to cook those numbers for him, I could cook them. Is that true? We played February 1st, and he went 0 for 4 from 3. So I can cook those numbers. He's 40 of his last 81 from 3. Call it 50%. That's how you cook numbers right there, baby. Since February 3rd. I mean, that is crazy. If you have a big that can, I don't think it's possible for him to do this. I mean, he's shooting 50% for 3. He'd be the best three-point shooter in the league. I don't think there's any chance that you can expect him to hold that for the whole year. For some reason, they're saying my math is wrong. And they have him, Oh, no, he didn't shoot any threes. My math was right. He went 0 for 4 against Orlando on February 1st. Those weren't threes. Those were just overall. So, yeah, he's still 40 of 85 since February 1st, which is still truly awesome. 40 of 85, 47% from three, 54% from the field. It's great. It's a 24-game stretch. It's 22 minutes a night. It's awesome. And now the quest is to figure out, where does he play on the defensive side? Question is whether he can do it. But if he can figure out to be decent defensively, it's going to be a major step for the Jazz. Jazz had some good signs defensively from Isaiah Collier and Keyonte George. I'm quite interested about the evolution of some of our players defensively because, truthfully, they've been awful. And I don't know what's next. We'll touch on it next on Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood. Sign up today for Robinhood and get the experience of the 1% from Robinhood. That's right. The luxuries, the gifts, the gives of the super wealthy are not just for the super uber rich, the super wealthy anymore. Robinhood is here for you. Let me give you all the details from Robinhood. That Robinhood Gold allows you to enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available to any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold to receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contribution. Sign up with Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk, rates subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year with the first match. Must keep funds in the IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. What time is it? It's game time, honey. I don't know what that's from. I just made that up. I don't know. Is that like part of that old silly NBA ad or something? There's nothing like watching basketball live, the energy of the crowd, the sound of sneakers on the hardwood, and maybe even celebrating a celebrity sighting courtside. If you want to catch a game in person, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Game Time's new feature is called Game Time Picks, and it filters out fluff, shows you only the best deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time scrolling through thousands of tickets. Easy ticket shopping. You just check out the Game Time app, and there are amazing deals on some of the best matchups coming up. Game Time Picks gives you super deals, giving you the best bang for your buck. Peace of mind. You get seat view, no surprise fees, and lowest price guaranteed. You book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, and create an account. Redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? See, that's what it is. It's game time. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. March Madness shows are up on Amazon Fire TV, so make sure you grab them. Super proud of what the crew has done. It's the best work we've ever done as a network. Big time. Gordon Hayward on the men's desk, Monique Billings, Jordan Robinson on the women's desk, plus all of our local experts. It's been totally great. I'm super curious about this. So Will Hardy in the post-game press conference last night complimented Isaiah Collier and Keyonte George for their ball pressure defensively last night. It's great. Step in the right direction. Here's what I'm super curious about. If we're totally honest, there's been a bunch of our guys this year that are just horrific defensively. No other way to say it. Horrific. And there still are. I don't need to single them out. You know they are. If you've been listening to Locked on Jazz, you're an everydayer, you know. Thank you to the everydayers who make this show what it is. Here's what I'm super curious about. Is it first a want to? I'm going to make the league. I'm going to be an all-star. I'm going to score 20. My defense doesn't matter. Okay. And then you get a comeuppance that if you're not careful, you're Bones Highland. And you'll be on 3 teams in 4 years and on your way out of the league. Okay. So that could be the first one. Is it lack of skill? Do we have guys on our roster whose defense is so bad because they just can't move. Their legs are too heavy. Their body doesn't move. They don't anticipate. They don't see it. They can't physically do it. They're not physically good enough to defend. Is it, number 3, lack of defensive, what I will call experience? In other words, this league's brutal. I've played in this league a ton. I'm being asked to do this. I'm shading him this way. We want the drives to go middle. We don't want to give up baseline. We force all pick and rolls left. Whatever the rules are, and I don't quite understand how to do that without getting beat. In other words, the minute I shade someone, I open up too far. The minute I let someone go left, they get all the way to the rim. Whatever it might be, that my fundamentals are not good enough defensively to be able to do that. Or I don't know which one this goes into. This one is either this one or the next one. I see this a lot. I see guys committing really egregious fouls and then looking like they didn't do it. So a lack of understanding of how to be physical defensively without making it abundantly obvious and getting called for fouls. Maybe. And the last one, to me, is maybe just, and this goes back to a conversation I had with Royce O'Neal a few years ago, that when Royce O'Neal became the primary defender for the Jazz in the first year, it was really hard. And in the second year, as being the primary defender, is like his 5th year in the league, it was way easier because he guarded every single one of these guys before. How much of just their first and second year just being an absolutely horrific defensive player for any of these guys is a little bit of like awe of who you're guarding and also just not knowing how to guard that player, that specific player. And then if you've played him before and you gotten beat, oh, this is his hezzy before his right-hand dribble. I'm used to it. I'm now see it and my brain clicks it. I really don't know the answer to this. But it will be interesting to me to see if some of our players are nearly as bad defensively. If they are, they're going to be out of the league. Like I'm talking about 3 of them in particular. If they're this bad defensively in 2 years, they're going to be out of the league. I don't care what they shoot. Once we're good, you can't play. If we're a good team in 3 years and they're playing defense the way they're playing right now, they won't actually be able to play. Like that's the truth. They can play right now because we don't have a lot of other options, and we're just trying to develop, and so it's okay. Maybe 4 of them actually. So the question to me is, which of those 4? Want to? That's the easy answer. I don't really buy it, honestly. I'm not a big want to guy. Like, yeah, you either have it or you don't. Maybe there's a 5th one. It's you either have it or you don't. You either fundamentally have the guts and gumption to be a defensive player or you don't. That could be the 5th one. So let's make it 5 items of whether or not these guys can pull it together defensively. Guts and gumption. Want to. In other words, the script by which you see yourself going to be an NBA player is not that I'm going to make an all-defensive team. It's I'm going to score 22 and make an all-star game and make 100 million. Okay? 3 is physical skills. Maybe the reason guys got drafted below 20 or below 10 is because of physical skills. They just actually, legs are heavy, instincts are slow, twitch muscles are slow. They're not good defense players. 2, last one, lack of understanding of how to execute the schemes and things that are NBA defense. And then the final one would be the guys you're guarding. I don't have the answer here. I'm presenting to you. Hopefully you think it's interesting food for thought. But I'm wondering, because we have some guys that are just horrific defensively. Horrific. And so do they just figure it out? Or do they get weeded out? Because there aren't that many guys in the league, as much as it's a non-defensive league, that are that horrific. Because they get weeded out. So we'll see. And I do think the one thing that's really interesting that's caught my eye a little bit, I'm purposely leaving players' names out. There's no need for that right on this one. Is that there have been some plays recently where guys are committing fouls And then they argue the foul. I'm like, my goodness, you clobbered him. Not like up on a shot, like just guarding on the floor. And you just blasted him and you're wondering why you got a foul call. Or you're chasing a screen and you grabbed him and you're wondering why you got a foul call. To me, that's being told, hey, be more physical defensively and having no understanding how to do that in the NBA yet. And even if you've been told, you don't understand how to do it. I think, unless it's that you don't have the skills. And so that's, I don't know. Will did compliment Isaiah Collier, Keyonte George for their ball pressure the other night. And the last 10 games, ever so subtly, the Jazz are 19th in the league defensively. So there's a few, like we were 29th and 30th for much of the year. Let's take 19th as being good. When, frankly, if we came out of next year and we were 19th defensively, I would call that a massive win if we did that next year. We haven't played the best of teams recently, but we also haven't been winning a lot. So, it's interesting to look at it in the last 10 games. If you look at our 4 factors defensively, and you have to be a little careful on all these when you do 10-game stretches, and I'll tell you why in a second. It's sometimes just shooting variance. But we're the 11th best team now defending the shot. We're kind of 30th for most of the year. We're 19th in the league on free throws. We're last in the NBA in turnover. Phoenix is now last in the NBA in turnovers. That's the first time all year we've not been last in the NBA in turnovers. Forced. And we're the 8th best defensive rebounding team. That's actually a pretty decent mix of what you could expect out of a team. Now, the variance is just 3-point shooting. And teams have shot 33% from 3 against us in the last 10 games. The league average over the last 10 games is 36. So, we might be seeing 1 or 2 threes not go down that should regularly go down. I was going to ask Will about this, but this is kind of why I didn't. And if we had, let's say that a 3.5 go down, if 1 3 goes down more than we're right now, which is kind of would seem to be right, we drop to 118.4 defensive rating, which gets us to 23rd. And if a 3.5 goes, we go to 120, we get to 25th, and it suddenly doesn't feel like that big an improvement. So it could just be 3-point shooting variance right now. But, hey, it's better. It's better. Brice is on a heater. I want to talk on that. How much did last night's win hurt us? Not that much, but we got a big one coming up here in a day or two. We'll explain that next on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by my good friends over at Intercap Lending, Brock Worthen, Steve Carter. Those are my people. Why? Because they have been with Locked On now for 6 or 7 years at Intercap Lending, and Steve Carter is the single best customer service experience that you can have. And it makes me so happy when we get to send Locked On people over to Intercap. Intercap's a mortgage company that's shaking things up by making home loans accessible, straightforward, and personal. Whether you're buying your first home, refinancing, or exploring options as a veteran, Intercap is there to guide you. They're not their average mortgage lender. They're known for their people-first approach, and that is where our own personal loan officer, Steve Carter, steps in for you. You're not a number. You're a Locked On and VIP. He treats you like you're just absolutely money, and he's absolutely incredible in his communication with you. They take clients from across the country. You've heard stories about Intercap getting people into their dream homes. It happens outside of Utah as well. So email me at dlock09@gmail.com. Let Intercap simplify the journey to home ownership. If you're ready to make the move or even just starting to explore, give them a look. They're there to make sure you're supported, informed, confident every step of the way with our own personal loan officer, Steve Carter. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com, and I'll set you up with the personal meeting with our own personal loan officer, the great Steve Carter over at Intercap Lending. Today's show is brought to you in part by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. That's where Upwork comes in. You can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts are ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Upwork, you find the right talent. You need help with a marketing campaign? Upwork connects you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. Fast and easy hiring. Posting a job is free and simple. Within a day, multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Cost-effective growth, including hiring full-time. Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale business efficiently. Visit Upwork.com right now. Post your job for free. That's Upwork.com. Upwork.com to connect with your top talent and grow your business today over at Upwork.com. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. If you like what you've heard so far, you want to reward us, a free 5-star review is great. Okay, we are 16 and 54. Might as well just share our day. You know, this should just become a daily event. Let's share a screen for those of you that are with us on the YouTube. Okay, here's our daily share. Washington now is in position for the number one pick or the number one positioning. We are 2. Charlotte is 3. New Orleans is 4. Okay, New Orleans won its 19th game last night. I don't know that we get to 19. That would be 3 more wins. If you look at the rest of our schedule, Boston and Cleveland, our next 4-5 games are teams that have to win, that need to. Well, they don't have to, but Cleveland has lost a few in a row, so they're probably going to want to win. Boston comes in, they just have so much talent, even without their guys. I don't think it matters. Like, Boston does not need to win. They're planted in number 2, and Cleveland does not need to win. They're playing to win, but Cleveland's lost 3 in a row. Okay. Memphis is a game back of Denver for home court advantage. So we're getting Memphis at full throttle. Houston is a game ahead of LA for number 2. We're getting Houston at full throttle. Denver, though Jokic is sitting out right now, is only a game ahead of Memphis. We're getting them at full throttle. So the next 5, I don't think we grab one. We play Charlotte on the 31st of March after getting the weekend off, which will be an interesting game. Because they're at 17, and we're now at 16. Then we go back to Houston, who needs it. Then we go to Indiana, who's currently in 4th in the East and trying to hold that off. They need it. Then we play Atlanta, who I don't know what they need or don't need. They're going to be 7 or 8. So 7 is better than 8 because you play the home playoff game. So in theory, they need it. Then we play Portland, who does not need it. Okay, so there's another one. So we got 1 game coming up against Charlotte. We got 1 game coming up against Portland. And then we got a game against Oklahoma City on the 11th, which on one level, Oklahoma City won't need to win at all. On the other level, Oklahoma City will be playing the last first round game because they're playing the last team off the play-in. So they need to play some of their guys or else they'll go too long without playing. And then we play Minnesota on the final night of the year. And as of right now, it certainly feels like Minnesota will be playing for something. So we only have, if you assume Boston and Cleveland come to play, we only have 3 nights the rest of the year at Charlotte, home against Portland, home against Oklahoma City, where teams don't need the victory. So that leads me to believe that last night's loss isn't that big a deal. Just for interest, Charlotte is now what you're wondering about. Charlotte has the Knicks, who are actually pretty well planted and have had injuries. The Thunder, the Heat, who've lost 9 in a row. Orlando, Toronto, who does not need to win. New Orleans, who does not need to win. Us, who does not need to win. That's 3. Indiana, who does. Sacramento is kind of in 9 at this point. Chicago doesn't need to win. Toronto doesn't need to win. And they end the year on back-to-back games at Boston. So Charlotte has, if we're counting OKC for us, OKC for them. Toronto, New Orleans, us, Chicago, Toronto. Charlotte has 6 more games this year against teams that don't need to win. So, and we only have 3. So we'll see. Washington plays Orlando, New York, Toronto 1, Philadelphia 2, Indiana, Brooklyn 3, Miami, whatever. Kings, Orlando, Boston, Indy, Philly 4, Chicago 5, and they play their final game against Miami. They got 6. And then New Orleans, as I just said, I don't know that we get 3 more. So I don't know if that was that big a deal that we won last night in the tank question. Not tank, but you got it. Okay, Brice Sensabaugh is on a heater. Brice Sensabaugh had another big game last night after going through, and what I love here is he went through some real doldrums and he found his shot again. This is a major step in your career. So Brice went through a period there where he went from the 29th of January to All-Star break. Brice was 5 of 27 from 3. And that's only because on the last night before the All-Star break, he hit 3. He's come back since All-Star break. And post All-Star break in 15 games, Brice Sensabaugh is shooting 49% from the field and 47% from 3 on 43 of 91 shooting. I think the important story here on Brice is that he bounced back from a struggle. I think that's actually the story. That's an important, playing 24 minutes a night. That's an important one for him to learn. But again, a 15-game stretch of 47% from 3 is great. Like, that is big time. Final thing on the show, Oscar Tshiebwe, incredible night. A bunch of people are emailing me, asking me, like, does Tshiebwe have a future, this and that? I love us. Just enjoy the moment. His spirit is indomitable. Enjoy the moment. Enjoy his spirit. His spirit will carry him. That is Locked On Jazz today. If you like the show, give us a 5-star review and please subscribe or follow the show. Follow me on socials. I'll try to get out as much as I can to you about what's going on with the team at DLock09. And our daily newsletter at Locked On Daily gets you Locked On Jazz in your inbox. Exclusively Empty the Noggin today. It's all on Locked On Jazz. Thank you very much for tuning in. We now send you on video to the first ever national 24/7 NBA channel. Locked On NBA on audio. Check out Locked On NBA Game Night every game, every night.